Hey family, class is in session. For some of the previous videos I've been teaching about stereotypes that other races such as Latinos, some Asian, and some um, Africans have about American blacks. And I thought it would be very important if I talk about the origins of where these stereotypes even originated from. Where did people come about saying that blacks are lazy? Like, where did that originate? All right, so let's just jump into it, okay? The stereotype that black people are lazy has some deep historical roots in American society. Um, it was deliberately constructed and perpetrated for economic, social, and political reasons. And so here's a detailed breakdown. I'm going to start from 1600s to 1865, within slavery period, okay? Forced unpaid labor versus the lazy narrative, okay? Enslaved Africans provided free labor, first of all. The United States, particularly in the South, relied heavily on the labor of enslaved Africans for agricultural production such as cotton, tobacco, sugar, indigo, etc. Okay. Um, the contradiction, okay, of unpaid laborers, who they were, the enslaved Africans were not paid, and then versus this lazy narrative, which really doesn't make sense because how can you, if you're working for free from sun up to sundown, how could it be a lazy bone in your body? Because we know how slavery was set up. Even if that slave would sit down, if the slave driver would whoop them or anything, so they were constantly working. It's not like they would just lay out in the cotton fields and just be like, "Ooh, I think I'm gonna just sit here and just chill." No. The contradiction is that enslaved people, they worked long hours, often from sun up to sundown, just like I said, in horrible conditions. However, enslavers justified slavery by arguing that black people were naturally lazy and needed white supervision to be productive. Refusal to work equals defiance. Listen to this. Enslaved people who resisted or worked at a slower pace were labeled as lazy rather than seen as people resisting forced labor. Maybe some of them were like, you know what, I'm not going to do this. It's not that they were lazy. Maybe a few of them were just so sick and tired of it and they just protested. Another one is this whole Sambo stereotype, okay? White enslavers spread the idea of the Sambo figure. It was an image of a lazy, carefree black person who avoided hard work. This was an early form of propaganda to justify slavery. See, if you can get a society to start thinking a certain way about a group of people, then that thought processes spreads. It's like they used to say, you tell one person, they tell another person, and so on and so on. It's like the game of telephone with slavery. Oh, these Negroes they didn't call us Negroes. You know what they called us with the hard R, that they're lazy. How can someone be lazy if they're working for you for free? All right, now, so we talked about that from 1600 up to 1865. Now let's talk about during post-emancipation and during the Reconstruction era, which from 1865 to 1877. Black freedom, a threat to the Southern economy. All right, after the Civil War, slavery was abolished, but white landowners still needed cheap labor to maintain their plantations. And God forbid they get their own white children to do it, huh? Sharecropping system. Many freed black people became sharecroppers, farming land owned by white landowners under exploitative conditions. And we already talked to you about that, how they would set laws and rules in place, like the black codes, where like they had to show that they worked somewhere, and if they did not have a job, then that they could be incarcerated. So it forced many of them many blacks to still work the land of their ex-slave owners just because of the black code, so that they wouldn't end up going to jail or losing their freedom, and also to make money. And again, think about it. If you were a slave owner, you were getting these black people to work for free. And now, because I'm told by the North that the war let these people free, and now if you work for me, I got to pay you. Do you really think they were really paying them what they were worth? Come on now. Come on. If you can manipulate a people where you can go into go over on ships to another continent and bring them back to your continent, beat them, strip them of their name and their language, do you really think you see them as human to want to pay them anything? Hell, those slave owners would have paid their cows or their horses before they'd pay these slaves because they saw us as chattel anyway, property. They didn't see us as human. Also, propaganda to justify racial violence. White supremacist groups like the KKK and Southern elites claimed Black people did not want to work and instead sought government handouts. This this reinforced resentment against Black economic progress. Now listen to this. You just The country just said that these people who had been enslaved for hundreds of years are now free. They have no money, they have no job, they have no land, they have no homes, they have nothing. They barely have their families because their families were sold from them, their children, their spouses. Most of the time they were sold to other plantations miles away. It's not like now where we have Waze and WhatsApp and we can find people and you'll find my location. So of course, certain government agencies, certain were available, thank God, to help these freely newly freed slaves to now start a new life. So they wanted to say, well, they're on this, they're getting this help because they're lazy. No, they're getting this help because they work for you for free and they had nothing and no one. And thank God for the abolitionists and those people who did try to help. Now let's move on up to the Jim Crow era. We're still talking about the origins of these stereotypes with Black people now. The Jim Crow era from 1877 to 1960. Now it's this whole 1960, remember now, this whole welfare queen narrative takes root. The stereotype evolved to depict Blacks as dependent on government assistance, even though Black communities are largely shut out of the government programs like the New Deal. And it's so true. During the times, the Jim Crow, and even up until the 60s, the civil rights time, there were certain laws put in place. There were certain where Blacks could not advance. Think about it: redlining, where banks would cross out certain sections on a map that there were predominantly Black or Black areas. They call them slums or ghettos, and they would not even the government at the time would not even back loans for Black people to get a mortgage in certain neighborhoods. So the stereotype of we just talked about government assistance, also the rise of racist caricatures, popular media, including minstrel shows, newspapers, and films. They continue to depict Black people as lazy and unmotivated. Or you see, they depict women as big fat mammies who that's all they're good for is taking care of white folk babies and having their own babies. Denial of economic opportunities. Black workers were often relegated to the lowest paying jobs, and when they fought for fair wages and better conditions, they were accused of not wanting to work. You see that? So how you gonna mess with me? I've been working for you. I'm like the janitor or whatever, and all I do is come to you and say, listen, I just feel like it's time for me to get a raise, or just a little. Oh, you just don't want to work. You lazy. You're a lazy little N word. That's why I'm so thankful that our ancestors and people before us, Mary McLeod Bethune, Booker T. Washington, all these great academics, started had the courage to start universities for our own people because we knew white folk didn't want us in theirs. And thank God for some other countries who allowed blacks to at least get an education. It's a shame that black people had to leave the United States in many cases and go over to Europe to get an education because America's educational system did not see us as human and would not allow us in. Mm, mm, mm. All right, guys, I'm going to keep this video under 10 minutes. I'm going to the second video. Part two is going to cover the civil rights movement and the backlash and how all those stereotypes continue to grow during that time from 1950 to the 1980s. All right, thank you so much. I continue to like, share, and subscribe. And hey, hit the notification bell so you know whenever I upload a video. And also, hey, it says buy me a coffee. If this is blessing you, you learning something, hey, buy a sister some coffee or Venmo a sister, okay? Talk to you soon. Be blessed. Bye. Keep your head up.